Jalen Carter had barely finished the first sentence of his assignment when the classroom froze. Mrs. Hartwell snatched the paper from his hands so fast the air cracked. "A 4-star general?" she scoffed, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. "You? Your father?" She didn't whisper it. She projected it, loud enough for the parents visiting for career day to turn and stare. Holding Jalen's neatly written paper between 2 fingers, she lifted it high like evidence in a courtroom. "This," she announced, "is what happens when children can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy." Jalen's throat tightened. His hands trembled under the desk. Mrs. Hartwell's lips curled as she began reading his words out loud, exaggerating every syllable for effect. "My dad advises world leaders." "Really, Jalen? My dad protects our country. So now you expect us to believe your father walks around with stars on his shoulders?" A few students shifted uncomfortably. Some stared at their desks. A parent in the back let out a quiet gasp. Then, she tore the paper straight down the middle. The sound cracked like thunder. Another rip. Then another. The pieces drifted down, landing around Jalen's shoes like fallen feathers. "Stop telling stories, Jalen," she said coldly. "Children from your background don't have fathers with jobs like that." Silence swallowed the room. Have you ever watched a teacher destroy a child simply because she decided his truth wasn't worth believing? 2 hours before Jalen Carter became the center of a classroom spectacle, the morning in the Carter household looked nothing like the story Mrs. Hartwell believed. Their apartment was small, yes, one of those aging brick buildings with thin walls and a staircase that creaked under every footstep. But inside, the warmth was undeniable. The smell of turkey bacon filled the kitchen. Sunlight stretched across a cluttered counter, and Jalen, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, could barely contain his excitement. His mother, Dr. Mariah Carter, stood at the stove in her hospital scrubs, tying her hair back as she flipped pancakes with one hand and checked patient messages with the other. "You're up early, baby," she said, smiling softly. "Nervous about career day?" Jalen shook his head. Dad said he might make it. His voice carried a mixture of pride and cautious hope. He tapped the screen of the old tablet propped up on the table. A paused video call showed a man in a dimly lit conference room, wearing a plain t-shirt, looking tired but determined. "Your father's still overseas, sweetheart," his mother reminded gently. "I know," Jalen whispered. "But he said he'd try, and Dad doesn't break promises." Mariah's expression shifted, a quiet sorrow, a fierce pride. She knelt down and straightened Jalen's collar. "Just remember what we always say. Your truth doesn't depend on who believes it." Jalen nodded. He believed that. He believed his father would walk through those school doors today, and he had no idea how badly he would need him. Jefferson Elementary buzzed with the nervous excitement of career day. Parents carried posters, toolkits, briefcases. Children whispered loudly, comparing whose mom or dad had the coolest job. But even here, in a place meant to celebrate every family, the invisible ranking system was painfully clear. When Tyler Monroe, blonde, confident, wearing brand new sneakers, announced that his father was head of federal policy negotiations, Mrs. Hartwell practically glowed. "Oh, Tyler, how impressive. A future leader right there," she said, patting his shoulder like he already belonged in a magazine. When Sophia Alvarez shyly mentioned her mom cleaned offices on the night shift, Mrs. Hartwell offered a tight smile. "That's nice, dear. Very important." Her eyes were already sweeping the room for a parent she found more worthy of attention. Malik nudged Jalen. "Man, she's something else." But Jalen stayed quiet. He'd watched this pattern for months. Who she praised, who she ignored, and who she treated like they were exaggerating just by existing. When Jalen walked in, backpack slightly frayed, hair freshly brushed, hope shining behind his glasses, Mrs. Hartwell's eyes paused on him the way someone pauses on an item they never planned to buy. A judgment. Fast. Effortless. "Find your seat, Jalen," she said without looking fully at him. He swallowed the sting. Today was special. Today his father might show up. And nothing, not even her, was going to ruin that. At 9:15 sharp, Mrs. Hartwell clapped her hands, calling the class to order. "Before our guests present," she announced, "each of you will write a short description of your parents' careers. 3 paragraphs. Clear handwriting. No embellishments." Her eyes flicked toward Jalen for a fraction of a second, a warning disguised as a glance. The room fell silent except for pencils scratching across paper. Students talked about senators, lawyers, engineers, about prestigious degrees in office buildings with floor-to-ceiling windows. Jalen sat up straight, pressing his pencil to the page. He wrote slowly, carefully, the way his mother taught him. He described his father's devotion, his long deployments, the nights Jalen and his mom fell asleep next to a laptop screen hoping for a good connection. He wrote about leadership, about service, about sacrifice, not from bragging, but from truth. By the time he finished, 3 solid paragraphs filled the page. His handwriting wasn't perfect, but it was proud. Malik leaned over. "You done already? What did you write?" Jalen smiled nervously. "Just the truth." But as soon as the words left his mouth, a shadow fell across his desk. Mrs. Hartwell stood behind him, peering over his shoulder. Her jaw tightened. Her nostrils flared. Her eyes sharpened with a sudden, unmistakable irritation, as if she had just discovered something she couldn't wait to tear apart. She didn't say a word. She simply turned and walked away, writing something in her planner. And Jalen felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Just before recess, Jalen slipped into the hallway to catch his breath. His palms were sweaty. His stomach twisted with nerves he couldn't explain. Then his pocket buzzed. A message from his mom. Update from Dad. Landed early. On his way to base meeting. Should reach school by 10:20. Big surprise. Don't tell anyone, Red Heart. Jalen's heart leapt. He stared at the screen, rereading it 3 times. His father was coming. He really was coming. He imagined the look on everyone's faces. He imagined standing beside him, proud, tall, seen. For the first time that morning, Jalen breathed easier. But a voice sliced into the moment. "What are you smiling about?" Mrs. Hartwell stood at the doorway, arms crossed tightly. Jalen quickly locked the screen. "Nothing, ma'am. Phones are not permitted during instruction time," she said sharply. "Unless, of course, someone feels the need to fabricate more stories." Her eyes drilled into him, searching for guilt that wasn't there. Jalen lowered his gaze. "Yes, ma'am." But as he walked back to class, clutching the secret in his pocket, he felt hope rise like a small flame. His dad was coming, and that truth was bigger than her doubt. By 10 o'clock, the classroom felt packed. Extra chairs lined the walls. Posters hung crookedly on the whiteboard. Parents squeezed in, balancing coffee cups and brochures. "Welcome, everyone," Mrs. Hartwell announced, her voice suddenly warm and polished. "Thank you for joining us for Career Day." Her warmth, however, wasn't evenly distributed. She rushed to shake the hand of Mr. Monroe, the federal consultant. She praised Mrs. Patel, the biomedical engineer, as if reading from a script. But when Mr. Alvarez, dressed in his custodial uniform, entered quietly and sat near the back, she gave him a thin nod, nothing more. Jalen watched all of it. He always watched. His father once told him, "Pay attention to how people treat those with less power. That's their true character." Today he understood exactly what that meant. Malik leaned over. "You think your dad's still coming?" Jalen nodded slowly. "Yeah, he promised." But the clock on the wall ticked louder with every second. Mrs. Hartwell cleared her throat. "Before our distinguished guests share their careers, I'd like a few students to read their assignments." Her eyes landed on Jalen like a spotlight. "Let's start with you." The room quieted. Parents turned. Students stared. Jalen stood, gripping his desk. He didn't know it yet, but the storm was about to break. Jalen walked to the front of the room with slow, careful steps, the kind a kid takes when he knows the floor beneath him might disappear. He held his assignment with both hands, trying to keep it from trembling. "Go ahead," Mrs. Hartwell said, folding her arms. "Read it." Jalen cleared his throat. "My father works." "Stop." Her voice was sharp enough to cut paper. The parents glanced up. The student stiffened. "You know what?" she said, lifting the paper from his hands before he could react. "I think I should read this myself." She held the paper up like a prosecutor about to present damning evidence. "My dad advises military leaders." Her tone dripped with sarcasm. "My dad oversees strategic defense operations." A few parents exchanged looks. "And this," she read dramatically, "my dad serves our country as a 4-star general." She closed her eyes and laughed softly, the kind of laugh that wasn't laughter at all, just cruelty in disguise. "A 4-star general, Jalen? Really? That's the story you chose to tell today." Jalen's mouth opened, but no words came. Mrs. Hartwell stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to seem controlled, but loud enough for everyone to hear every syllable. Your father works a government job. That's what the school records say. A job that does not include stars. She tapped the paper. Where exactly did you get the idea you could pretend otherwise? Malik shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ma'am, maybe he's. Stay out of it, she snapped. Then she tore the paper in half. The sound cracked through the room like a broken bone. Then she tore it again, and again, until the words Jalen had written with so much pride were nothing but scraps drifting to the floor like ash. You will rewrite this, she said coldly. And this time, you will write the truth. No more fantasy. The whole room watched Jalen's chest rise and fall, watched him swallow the humiliation he didn't deserve. But he did not apologize. And that defiance, that tiny spark, only made her angrier. The hallway leading to the main office seemed impossibly long. Jalen walked it alone, wiping at his eyes before the tears could fall. His father always said, courage isn't about not crying. It's about standing when everything in you wants to sit. But standing felt hard. Vice Principal Maynard sat behind a desk stacked with unopened emails and lukewarm coffee. He looked up with the weary expression of a man who had heard one too many excuses. Mrs. Hartwell called, he said. She tells me you disrupted class. Jalen shook his head. No, sir. She didn't believe what I wrote. Maynard opened a folder. Your father's occupation, government employee. That's what it says right here. So why would you claim he's something else? Because that's not the whole job, Jalen whispered. Maynard sighed. Son, kids sometimes exaggerate. Wanting your dad to sound impressive is normal. But making claims like this is. I'm not exaggerating. Another sigh. Heavier this time, like he believed he was dealing with a child unable to tell fantasy from reality. Then Jalen's phone buzzed. A text. Running late. We'll be there by 10:20. I'm proud of you. Jalen held it out. See? He's coming. Maynard barely glanced at it. A text message doesn't prove anything. Now go back and apologize to your teacher. Jalen stared at him. You don't believe me either, he said quietly. Maynard folded his hands. It's not about belief. It's about facts. Go on. And just like that, another adult dismissed him. When Jalen stepped back into the classroom, he felt the shift instantly. Parents filled every corner now. Paper cups rustled. Children whispered. The air sat thick with judgment he could feel, but not see. Mrs. Hartwell glanced up sharply. Jalen, do you have anything you'd like to say to the class? His palms tightened around his backpack strap. No, ma'am. Her eyebrow lifted. You were given a chance to correct your mistake. Apologize, rewrite your assignment, and we move on. That's how responsibility works. Several parents looked uneasy. One father cleared his throat, as if he wanted to speak, but couldn't. Jalen shook his head. I didn't lie. Mrs. Hartwell's jaw clenched. Malik muttered. Man, this is messed up. Mrs. Hartwell spun around. Excuse me. Malik froze. I didn't mean. Go to the hallway. Now. He grabbed his backpack and left, shooting Jalen a look full of loyalty and fear. Now Jalen stood alone again. Mrs. Hartwell turned to him. You will sit there until you're ready to tell the truth. He glanced at the clock. 10:03. Then 10:08. 10:12. Every second felt like a heartbeat he couldn't control. When it hit 10:15, Mrs. Hartwell leaned in close enough for only him to hear. Your father is not coming. Jalen stared straight ahead. Yes, he is. The first sign was the rumble. A low, distant vibration that made a few parents glance toward the window. Then another. Then the unmistakable hum of engines, powerful ones. 3 black SUVs turned into the school driveway. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips. Outside, men in dark uniforms stepped out first, scanning the area with swift, practiced movements. They weren't police. They weren't security guards. They were military. A ripple shot through the room. Is that Secret Service? Someone whispered. Mrs. Hartwell stiffened. Then the back door of the center SUV opened. A tall man stepped out. Shoulders square. Uniform pressed to absolute perfection. Medals arranged in perfect rows. And on each shoulder. 4 stars. The parents gasped. Even Tyler's bragging father went silent. Jalen didn't move. He didn't breathe. Inside the school, heels clicked sharply, the principal rushing toward the entrance. Her smile was overly bright, almost panicked. General Carter, sir, we had no idea. He shook her hand firmly. Ma'am, I'm here for my son. Those words rippled down the hallway like a shockwave. Mrs. Hartwell's face drained of all color. General Carter walked with a calm force, each step deliberate. He didn't bring an entourage inside. He didn't need one. His presence alone filled every inch of the space. And when he reached the doorway of classroom 4B, the entire room fell into absolute silence. Every parent stood. Every student stared. Only one voice broke the quiet, small and trembling. "Dad." General Carter's expression changed the moment he saw Jalen, the stern lines softening, the controlled posture breaking just enough for emotion to bleed through. He crossed the room in 4 determined strides and knelt down, pulling his son into his arms. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm sorry I'm late." Jalen clung to him, the relief hitting so fast it almost knocked him over. When the general finally rose to his full height, he turned, slow, steady, to face the woman who had humiliated his child. Mrs. Hartwell stood frozen, hands clasped, eyes wide. "Are you Jalen's teacher?" he asked, voice calm but edged with steel. "Why, yes, sir," she managed. "General Carter, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he finished. She swallowed, nodded weakly. He stepped toward her, not aggressively, but with the kind of authority that needed no volume to command a room. "My son wrote the truth," he said. "But instead of listening, you dismissed him. Publicly. Repeatedly." "Sir, I was only trying to." "You were trying to teach him a lesson about honesty," he said. "But you forgot the first rule of integrity. You never accuse someone of lying because of your own assumptions." A flush crept up her neck. "General, please understand, he continued, voice steady as stone. "I've spent 3 decades serving this country. I've stood beside soldiers who would give their lives for our values. And the value we hold above all else." He glanced at Jalen. "Is truth, even when it comes from someone small, someone young, someone you underestimated." The room was so silent the clock sounded deafening. "Jalen told you who I am," he said. "And instead of believing him, you tore up his words, his work, his pride." Mrs. Hartwell's voice cracked. I made a mistake." General Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Ma'am, my son didn't need you to believe his father was a general," he said quietly. "He needed you to believe him." A few parents wiped their eyes. Jalen stood a little taller. Mrs. Hartwell lowered her head. I'm so sorry," she whispered. General Carter placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Apologize to him," he said. And she did. Right there. In front of everyone. For a long moment, Mrs. Hartwell simply stood there, her hands trembling, her throat tightening around words she clearly wasn't used to saying. She turned toward Jalen, her voice unsteady. "Jalen, I am truly sorry," she whispered. "I doubted you. I judged you. I let my assumptions guide my actions instead of my responsibility as your teacher. You deserved better." No sarcasm, no condescension, just raw discomfort, the kind that only comes from facing the truth of one's own prejudice. Some parents shifted, surprised to see humility where arrogance had lived just moments before. "I shouldn't have dismissed your words," she continued, "or torn your assignment, or embarrassed you. That was wrong, deeply wrong, and I hope you can forgive me." Jalen looked up at her, eyes still red from the humiliation he'd held inside. "I just wanted you to believe me," he said quietly. Mrs. Hartwell's composure cracked. "I know, and I failed you." General Carter watched the exchange carefully, his posture softening just enough. He wasn't a man who enjoyed seeing others brought low, but he was a man who valued accountability. He nodded slowly. "It takes character to admit when you've been wrong. I appreciate your apology. But change is measured after today, not during." Mrs. Hartwell nodded, swallowing her pride with visible difficulty. And for the first time all morning, the air in the room began to ease. Word of what happened in classroom 4B traveled through Jefferson Elementary faster than any official announcement ever could. Parents whispered in hallways. Teachers exchanged glances. The principal reviewed the incident 3 separate times before lunch. By the end of the day, a new directive was issued. Every teacher would attend mandatory training on bias, communication, and equitable student treatment. Not a suggestion, a requirement. Some teachers complained quietly, but most knew the change was overdue. Mrs. Hartwell attended the first session early. She sat in the front row, notebook open, pen ready. No excuses, no resistance. She didn't try to justify her actions. Instead, she listened, really listened, as instructors spoke about unconscious bias, the weight of assumptions, and the power teachers hold over a child's dignity. Meanwhile, Jalen's classmates seemed to see him in a new light. Tyler offered an awkward but genuine, "Hey, your dad's pretty cool." Sophia gave him a shy smile. Even students who had stayed silent during the confrontation now looked at him with a kind of reverence. The principal met Jalen privately. "You showed courage today," she said. "You stood firm even when adults didn't believe you. We're making changes because of that." Jalen didn't know what to say. He just nodded, his heart full. Because for once, the truth hadn't been dismissed. It had sparked something bigger. No one knew exactly which parent took the photo. But by evening, a picture of General Carter kneeling to hug his son appeared on social media, captioned with, "This boy's teacher called him a liar." Then his father walked in. People clicked. People shared. People argued. Across the country, thousands of parents, students, veterans, and educators weighed in. Some saw privilege. Some saw injustice. Most saw a child who had been wronged, and a moment of truth that restored his dignity. News outlets picked it up. Comment sections exploded. Hashtags started forming. Veterans groups expressed support. And in one viral clip from a parent's phone, General Carter's words were repeated over and over. "My son didn't need you to believe he had a general for a father. He needed you to believe him." Even Mrs. Hartwell, to her credit, didn't hide. She offered a public statement. Not defensive, not polished, just honest. "I was wrong. I let bias guide my judgment. And a child paid for that mistake. I'm committed to being better." The internet didn't go easy on her. But some people respected the admission. And Jalen, he stayed humble through it all. All he cared about was that his father believed him. And now, everyone else finally did too. Some stories are dramatic because of explosions or danger. But this one mattered because it exposed something silent. Something that happens in classrooms every day, to children who don't have a general walking through the door to prove their truth. Assumptions, bias, doubt directed at the innocent. Jalen's courage wasn't in standing up to a teacher. His courage was in refusing to bend his truth, even when every adult in the room told him to shrink. His father didn't show up to make a scene. He showed up to make things right. And maybe that's the lesson we all need. Believing children doesn't make us foolish. It makes us fair. If you found this story powerful, if it reminded you of something you've lived, seen, or survived, hit that like button, comment your thoughts or experiences, and subscribe to the channel for more stories where truth confronts injustice and wins. Because every child deserves to be believed, every voice deserves to be heard, and every story deserves to be told.